motor running. Head out on the highway.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Fan to Fan podcast, brought to you on Fridays by pwponderings.com and on Mondays by wrestlefolks.wordpress.com. Be sure to follow both websites on Twitter at pwponderings and at wrestlefolks. Also, be sure to subscribe to both of them on iTunes. Leave a nice 5-star review and some comments. Find them on Stitcher Radio as well. And today is big episode number 10. Fan to Fan has hit the double digits, and I, of course, want to thank everybody who has listened to the episodes thus far. Your support means a lot. You listening means a lot, and I'm glad we made it this far. And, of course, with double digits, I got to bring on a pretty special guest, right? So I recruited none other than Leonard F. Chikarason. Yes, the man most of you know as the former director of fun of CHIKARA. Did commentary for CHIKARA as well. Did commentary for Dragon Gate USA and Evolve. Currently doing commentary for Wrestling is Fun, Wrestling is Cool, Wrestling is Respect, and AIW, Absolute Intense Wrestling. A good dude. We have a very, very long conversation. Yes, wrestling is brought up. We talk about Chikarason being an ECW fan and going to many of the ECW arena shows, as well, of course, as he being the director of fun for CHIKARA and some of his favorite memories while being a part of that organization. But there's also a lot of talk about podcasts in general. We go into comic books pretty in-depth. We talk about The Simpsons a lot. It's a fun conversation. LFC and I have quite a bit in common, it turns out. And, we geek out about a lot of different things, so it's a heck of a ride. I hope you packed a lunch, but I certainly had a good time recording the show, as I usually do. But it's a fun episode. I think you're going to enjoy hearing myself and Leonard talk, and if you only know Leonard F. Chikarason from what you see or what you hear from watching the shows that he is on, you're going to get a different look at this man and get to see what he is really all about. So without further ado, I'd like to present episode number 10 with my pal, Leonard F. Chikarason. All right, so we're back here on Fan to Fan with Leonard F. Chikarason.
Hey, Kevin, thanks for having me on the show. Hey, could we curse on this podcast?
Oh, my gosh. I feel like I've name-dropped you a few times on the podcast about how much you hate that phrase.
It's the internet. You can curse everywhere except for a podcast that I am on.
Yeah, and what's great is I was listening to Des Delgadillo from Pro Wrestling Ponderings had Veda Scott on our podcast, and poor thing was sick as a dog during it, but she asked that question, and I just had to laugh thinking about you.
Oh, man, I tell you, it's the internet. You know, they'll tell you if you can't curse, or they'll do like the old radio thing where everybody in the studio will be like, whoa! It's the internet. You can curse. How about Austin doing the 1 week of shows, like the Tuesday show is no swearing.
Is that really a thing?
Yes.
Okay, because I saw he like flipped his the format of his show sort of, and so the last one I listened to was Lawler, because like I really don't care about Steve Austin talking about his ranch or drinking beer or whatever else, or Redneck Island. Could not possibly care less. Love the interviews he does with wrestlers. So I did not know there was a no swearing Tuesday. What's the point in that?
Okay, he says the reason for it is because he's gotten letters from people who want to listen to the show in the car, and they have their kids in there, and they don't want to have him talking about the Sasquatch snorkel that he puts on when he, does whatever business he's going to do with Sasquatch, or, what he's going to double his electronic toothbrush as and things like that. So he decided that he's going to have once a week is going to be a clean show, and the other is going to be the foul-mouthed redneck, that you come to know and love. In my mind, he already has one highly successful podcast that has thousands and thousands of subscribers. By having a separate feed on iTunes, he's now going to have two very successful podcasts that people subscribe to.
Oh, so there's two feeds now?
Yes, because when he did it, the Thursday, I have the Thursday show and I have the Thursday show feed. And then when Tuesday came up, last Tuesday was the JR show, which was really good. It's like, it's not coming up in the feed. I'm like, what's going on? So I had to drag to the depths of the filth that is iTunes itself and type in Steve
your favorite
Austin.
things in the whole world.
Oh, I hate iTunes so much. The interface is wretched. Ugh. Almost as much as I hate people asking if you can curse on podcasts and Blog Talk Radio. Those are my pet peeves.
I'm with you, but yeah, continue.
All right, so I go and I just type in Steve Austin, and a second feed shows up. One is just called the Steve Austin Show, and then the other one is Steve Austin Show Unleashed. And it looks like the Tuesday show is the interview show, and then the Thursday show is just going to be kind of like him talking about whatever he talks about. And like this week was Joey Styles part 1. Last week was Jim Ross, and I know he has the William Regal one in the can, so that's probably going to be coming here in the near future.
So I've got the crummy feed with the shows I don't care about. I need to go find it because, like you, I had the same thing where I was like, the Jim Ross interview, it hasn't showed up my iTunes feed, and then I'm obviously too lazy to go find a download link, apparently. But now that I know there's another feed out there, I can finally listen to it too. Do they go in depth about his firing and things of that nature?
No, you mean his retirement?
Excuse me, his retirement.
Yeah, no, they don't go into much of that at all.
That's a shame. I understand Jim Ross seems to be a company guy, though, so can't blame him, I guess.
Yeah, he does say that he goes, just because I'm retiring doesn't mean I'm going to sit on the porch in a rocking chair. He goes, I've got things I'm doing. So I'll be excited. I'm sure at some point he'll be back. And, Austin is like, he goes, I hope they get in touch with you to call whatever the next Undertaker match is. Because an Undertaker match, especially at WrestleMania without Jim Ross calling it, is not an Undertaker match.
I'm with him. I agree completely. Yes. And at the very least, I'm very happy he was around to do the Mid-South DVD because he did a lot of new commentary for some of those matches, which I think is astounding.
I haven't picked it up yet, only because I haven't gone up to Blu-ray yet. And I know the Blu-ray has a bunch of extra stuff on it as opposed to just extra stuff.
Right.
And I'm like, well, if I didn't buy it yet, I'm sure the documentary will be on Netflix in like 8 weeks. So I could probably just wait, and if the documentary sucks me enough, then I'll probably, get the DVD.
Yeah, I think
the last DVD that I bought was the Foley one.
And it's a great one, too.
It's a great one. I love Foley. Foley's he's my number one of all time.
But I don't understand why they did not do a documentary for the Mid-South DVD, because it's one of those talk a little bit about a match, show a match, and back and forth.
Oh, really?
That. Yeah, it is. Which is okay, but the problem is so many of those matches are pretty laborious because a lot of them are really long, and some of those matches just don't hold up or aren't as interesting. So I think having them for a match to a couple minutes talking to a match isn't enough kind of rest time. When they're all kind of extras, I feel like you can more watch them at your leisure. Maybe that's just me, though. Am I giving you second thoughts about getting this?
Yeah, now I have second. Well, at least I'm definitely going to watch the documentary when it comes up on the old Netflix. Now I'm just going to change it on my Amazon wish list from a high priority to a medium priority.
Yeah, I have not watched the second disc yet, but
okay.
It's enjoyable because Mid-South is one of those things that I completely missed out on. So I'm glad.
You know what? I got a chance to watch it, when the sets were going all around.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I think I got a chance to watch those back in 04, 05 maybe, and I haven't watched them since. And I remember really liking them then, and I wonder, I know how you said a lot of that stuff doesn't hold up 2013. I wonder if I'd have the same feeling about it in 2013 as opposed to when I did in 2004, 2005. Like the Midnight Express stuff I like the Crockett Midnight Express stuff more than the Mid-South Midnight Express stuff.
Right, I agree with you. There's some matches that certainly hold up. I think Duggan and DiBiase is pretty fun. There's some other things on there, but I watched the last match on the first disc of the Blu-ray is Flair versus Terry Taylor for the NWA title. It's 44 minutes, and it is a whole lot of nothing going on in that match.
Did you you mentioned Ted DiBiase? Did you hear DiBiase when he was on the MLW podcast a couple weeks ago?
Yes, I did.
I just got a chance to listen to it. I'm real hit or miss with the MLW podcast.
Right.
Only because, how can I put this judiciously? One of the hosts are really annoying.
MSL?
I didn't say that. But he's not on that one. And then the one that was this week was Cornette. So it was a lot of Conan and Cornette talking. and MSL would chime in like once in a blue moon, and then Court would like chime in with like one or two really good stories, kind of like when Cornette was talking about how Laurinaitis was handling OVW, and then how Court was on the other side of things.
Right.
When all that was going on. So there's a lot of really interesting talk there, and there's a two-parter. The other part's going up next week. So I know Jim Cornette these days is like the hated person in the world. Everybody hates Jim Cornette these days. But I still like Jim Cornette. I've been a Jim Cornette fan my whole life. And even though these days I might start to see some cracks in the veneer and his sensibilities may not match up to what 2013 wrestling is and could be, I'm still a fan of the man. Just like I'll always be a fan of Raven. Like everyone that I know that's been on shows with Raven, they all want to come and tell me these horrible stories of what a jerk Raven is. And I know they do this to me just because they know I love Raven so much, and they want to make me mad because Raven in real life is, I'm sure, a sweetheart and not the jerk that everyone tells me is. And when I mean everyone, I mean every single person that's ever met Raven tells me he's the biggest jerk in the world. And I think it's just a giant conspiracy to break my heart.
Of course, being the ECW fan you were back in the day, which we'll get to, I promise. I mentioned Cornette, and I kind of have the same idea as you did. I wasn't the biggest fan of some of the Ring of Honor stuff he did, but the funny thing about him was I talked about one of my friends got to go to the Mid-Atlantic convention that was a couple weeks ago, and Cornette was there. And my friend got to go in his Q&A, and someone asked him about him getting the recent Kevin Steen shooting match compilation deleted. And the funny thing was he was talking about Steen and obviously having some choice words about him and Generico and Cabana and stuff. And funny enough, my friend was sitting right in front of Steve Corino, who was listening to all this going on. Just this nice little smirk and smile on his face. He's hearing Cornette talk about this man who obviously Carino's current Ring of Honor career has been raveled around and had that big feud with. So I thought that was pretty funny that there Cornette is spouting his theories, and there's just Carino sitting right there taking it all in.
And again, it's not like Cornette's talking into a vacuum. Like, he knows it's going to get back to him. It's an internet age. He had the same interview when he talked on Observer. He had the same interview with Mike Johnson where he mentioned all the same stuff,
right,
and brought up the same thing. So it's not like if and I'm sure even before it happened, I'm sure while they were in Ring of Honor together, Steen knew that Jim Cornette had a problem with him, and Jim Cornette knew Steen had a problem with him. It's not like it's a surprise to either party that Jim Cornette is saying things about Kevin Steen and vice versa.
Okay, great point. So then why have the Steen DVD pulled?
Because the contract that he had with his departure, and this is his words, this is not me with like some sort of crazy insider knowledge. He said that the contract that he had with Ring of Honor, that neither party would disparage each other in a way to make profit. Like, he couldn't go do a shoot interview and bury Ring of Honor, like with what's his face who does the kayfabe commentaries.
Yeah, I can't. Sean Oliver,
right?
The comedian.
Like, Cornette couldn't go to him or Feinstein or whoever does shoot interviews these days and do like, here's all the secrets and all the dirt on Ring of Honor, and I make a bunch of money off it. And then conversely, Ring of Honor couldn't do the same of like, well, here's all the dirt on Jim Cornette. We're going to make a bunch of money off it. Like, they could badmouth each other, I guess, but they can't badmouth each other to make a profit off it.
Okay, so I guess that's the difference why Cornette's able to go say what he wants on like the Mike Johnson podcast or this convention, while Ring of Honor can't put out a shoot interview with Steen disparaging Jim Cornette and getting away with it.
And again, I'm not a legal expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not R.D. Evans and or Beta Scott, but that is what Jim Cornette said. So
that is a good enough explanation for me for now. But
for now,
for now, we'll see. What
you and your dirt sheet muck raking, you're going to get to the bottom of this one. I know you will, Kevin Ford.
That's all Pro Wrestling Ponderings is.
It's a bunch of dirt sheet muck raking.
Yeah, that's all it is. That's actually the tagline, weirdly enough.
Not We Are Indie Wrestling, it's dirt sheet muck raking.
No, I don't even think it's We Are Indie Wrestling anymore. I think we changed it to something else.
See, it still comes up like that. Like when I type in PW in my Firefox, it comes up, like the it doesn't say it on the masthead anymore, but it still says it like connected to the URL.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know if there's way to fix that, because there was definitely talks of, I don't don't know if we want this as our tagline anymore. So I can say that.
As long as you change the spelling to INDIE, I think you're
okay.
okay.
Perfect. I know you've been going on this on Twitter that you want people to stop using indie wrestling INDY and change it to INDIE.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, I'm of the Adam Lash, Smart Mark Video, Impresario, iPay-per-views. He is the one who kind of put it as indie is INDY is like indie racing, whereas indie INDIE is indie music, indie film, indie art. And a lot of people say that professional wrestling is an art, so he feels that it should be under that sort of thought, that sort of umbrella, and I agree with him. It's not like I had this great idea, Adam had this great idea, and I just piggybacked on to him.
But Nick Manoa, who is pro wrestling's BFF, says otherwise. So now I am torn.
I think once Vermemphis happens, I think Nick Manoa will be changing his tune. Vermemphis is Adam Lash's big plan that he has to bring back the New England territories and Memphis at the same time.
Okay. I remember seeing it on... Because this is what happens to me a lot. I'll go on Twitter and I'll see something that somebody writes, and there was clearly this big Twitter exchange that I just happened to miss the boat on.
Right.
And I can't be bothered to go back and look for it. So I'm just like, all right, I guess this is a thing now that's happening, and I'll just have to learn and catch up somewhere.
When I go to bed at night, I keep the Twitter up on my desktop here. I just keep it there, like on the mentions or interactions or whatever the hell they call it these days. And then I wake up in the morning and I come over and I go to check my mail and I see, all right, no interactions. It was a slow night. And sometimes we feel like 15 interactions. I'm like, oh, what the hell did I do now? And it's always like Nick and Adam going back and forth about something, and somehow I get pulled into it at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm like, hey, I'm trying to sleep. I don't know what you guys are up to.
You get pulled into a lot of those, because I'll definitely see like 18 comments with your name, and then you'll throw in a comment and then fade away back into the background.
Yeah, I'm a busy man. Sometimes, like I said, if I see that the conversation is still going on, I'll try to chime in more. But if it's like 3 or 4 hours after the fact, I'll just be like, hey, here's my thoughts. I'm moving on.
Right. And then someone else, of course, will drum it back up because of that. That's right, just how Twitter works.
For all intents and purposes, though, whatever you call the wrestling that you watch, I don't care if you call it Indie Y, Indie IE, if you just call it wrestling, just go to wrestling, man. That's what I do, and that's what I've done my whole life. Just go to wrestling. I know you want to get to ECW, but
that's next. I had the transition too. You set it up perfectly.
All right, so when I discovered ECW in like 1993, I didn't think, I'm like, well, there's an independent promotion. I'm like, that's Don Morocco and Jimmy Snuka and Terry Funk and Eddie Gilbert. Those are all guys that were just on TV like anywhere from like a year to 2 years ago. This is obviously just a third promotion that I'm now discovering. And I didn't know that I'm like, well, obviously they don't have the budget. They're a big promotion because they have big names. They're just not as on the financial level of a WWF or WCW. And it wasn't until years later I'm like, oh, they were technically an independent promotion. Oh, that makes sense. I was very naive back then.
So what made you fall in love with the old ECW? Well,
I have been a wrestling fan my whole life. I have the same gateway into wrestling that a lot of other people do. I was at my grandfather's house, and my grandfather and my father, not so much these days my father, but my grandfather were big wrestling fans. Like my dad went to go see like Haystacks Calhoun. He went to go see Bruno versus Larry Zbyszko when they did the tour down in our area in the northeastern Pennsylvania area. And it was Roddy Piper smashing the coconut in Jimmy Snuka's head. That was the first thing I ever saw in wrestling. And then I think a little later I went to the store, and it was the cover of the WWF magazine. It was like Christmas themed, but it was like also Roddy Piper, like in this crazy painted style. And I'm like, hey, that's that crazy guy that I saw hit the other guy with the coconut. And I picked it up, and I was a fan my whole life. And anytime I came upon wrestling or found wrestling, I just consumed it in any way that I could, whether it was the world class stuff, the global stuff, when we finally got Crockett stuff, right before it turned over to WCW in our area. And one day I was just flipping through the stations, and it was the Eddie Gilbert had beat Terry Funk to see who the King of Philadelphia was. And Eddie Gilbert was in the full crown and robe, at some Philadelphia street festival harassing people, telling them that he was the king of Philadelphia. And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm in. And I was on Tuesdays at 6 when I was in high school. It's like 93. So I would, whatever I had going on, whatever social mixers, whatever cotillions were going on at Tuesdays, I'm like, I got to be home 6 o'clock. And we had 3 TVs in the house, one in my folks' room, one in my room, and one in the living room. And it would only come in on the TV in my folks' room. So I would have to make sure I was home in enough time to get my VCR into my folks' room to hook it up to tape ECW as well while I was watching.
Oh, wow. Do you have like this massive video collection of all the episodes?
I do. And when I say begrudgingly, I say I do only because I recently converted all the videotapes digitally just because I need to get rid of stuff. I chucked tons and tons of videotapes. I sent a bunch of stuff to Lash that he was uploading to his YouTube account. I fear that one of my tapes was the one that broke his VCR. But I had like an almost complete run of ECW TV from like 94 to 98.
That's insane.
On 25 6-hour VHS tapes.
Wow.
Yeah. And then of course like all the pay-per-views and everything. I would buy like the commercial releases from I almost said Smart Mark from RF Video. Like they do like the Big Apple like Blizzard Bash or whatever it'd be. Like it wouldn't get none of those matches be on TV, but it would be like a separate show, and I'd have a ton of those as well. Your separate Heatwave shows and Cyber Slams and stuff like that. But man, like I was ECW, but I wasn't like a bleacher bum, or I wasn't one of those guys in the front row. I was just a guy who, like, as soon as I got my permit and was able to drive, or once I passed my permit test and I was able to drive by myself, I think the first thing that I did was go to a Jim Thorpe show, one of the house shows for ECW. And then the next thing I did was the TV taping for Superstars the night after Owen won the King of the Ring. Like, that was the same weekend. Like, the Jim Thorpe show was a Friday, and that King of the Ring taping was the Superstars taping was a Monday.
It's a pretty awesome weekend.
Yeah.
Where was that King of the Ring?
I don't know where the King of the Ring was. I can't remember. But like I said, the TV taping, the Superstars taping was at the March Center at King's College in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Okay, because I was thinking King of the Ring probably was close. Mm-hmm. So I didn't know. I was like, why didn't you go to the King of the Ring?
Because
I was in Baltimore. Okay.
Yeah.
Stupid Baltimore. Who goes there?
I didn't start really actually the first show that I ever traveled out of state for was like everything was like Pennsylvania. That's it. I can't go any further than that. I was afraid. But the first out of Pennsylvania show that I went to was the Hardcore. No, was it? Yeah, it was Hardcore Heaven 97 pay-per-view in Florida for ECW. 97.
I like how you went from I can't leave Pennsylvania to Florida.
Yeah, well, I was at the first ECW pay-per-view. I had to be at the next one.
Fair enough. Oh, man. So you say you weren't like one of those bleacher people or front row, but you did go to the ECW arena pretty often, did you not?
Yeah, from October of 95 to December of 97, I missed one show at the arena.
Wow. And
it was the Terry Funk Sabu Born to Be Wired match right before the pay-per-view. And I have friends of mine that was like my crew that I used to go to the shows with. And to this day, they still, every now and then, they're like, yep, you missed this show.
Of course, like the one ECW arena show you miss is like one of the most critical shows that people talk about.
Yeah.
So you say you go to 97. Did you not go at all from the 98 to the close? I guess they weren't running there as much.
Well, right. They weren't running there as much. They used to run like every 3 weeks, and then it turned to like every 4 to 5 weeks, and then it ran to like almost like every 2 months. It just started waning and waning. And around 98, 99-ish is when I started getting a real job and attempting to become an adult, and I didn't have as much free time to be able to take the trip every 3 weeks or whenever the shows were. I was able to squeeze in a couple. I think I was able to hit
one of the last arena shows in 2000. It had like a Psychosis match on it after he got let go from WCW.
Okay.
And I'm just trying to remember that. But no, the arena was awesome. I love going to shows there. And one of my first official duties as Leonard F. Chikarason, whatever that means, was at the ECW arena. And I love telling this story. So, Tag World Grand Prix 2005 is the first time I did anything in a real wrestling capacity. All that VCW stuff is garbage. And even the VCW quote-unquote indie show that Smart Mark taped, it's the Plymouth Armory, that's garbage too. So I do Tag World Grand Prix 2005, great set of shows. And then the next thing that I did was at the CZW show when they announced that the other promotions were going to do the shows in like the double headers with CZW. I don't know if you remember this.
I don't think I saw the CCW show where they announced. I obviously remember the Chikara show very well, but I don't remember the announcement or anything.
Right. So this is the second thing that I do. It's Zandig comes out, and then I come out into the ring. Zandig announces that they're doing the doubleheader with Chikara. I shake hands with Zandig in the middle of the ring at the ECW arena. Then crazy PCP Ethan Manny comes out. And then Ian Rotten comes out. Now, one of these people in this ring have absolutely no business being in that ring. And to say I was beyond nervous is an understatement. Besides the fact that it was those four, those four people in the ring, but the fact that it was like the ECW arena, like it still meant, this cool thing to me at the time. And, as years went on, like I think some Chikara events there made it cool again, as opposed to just the place that people ran every month. But yeah, that was like the first time. Like it was a very surreal moment, like when I was in the ring looking out at the crowd at the ECW arena.
Did you ever reach the point where you could take the ECW arena for granted, or has it always been special to you?
That's a really interesting question. Yeah, I guess kind of toward the end, like the last couple Chikara events there, it just felt like, it had lost its luster, not through anything that, Chikara did or any one promotion did, but I think by that point, like by the time 2011 rolled around and it was closing its doors, like Chikara had already done like almost 20 shows there or some ridiculous number. And I'm just like, yeah, it's just another place we have shows. It's not as special. I did have a really cool moment backstage at one of the King of Trios with Tommy Dreamer. That we, it was, I'm trying to think. It was as Jigsaw and Quack and the Young Bucks were headed to the ring. We had screens in the back to watch the show. And as they're doing their entrances and Gavin's doing the ring introductions, myself and Dasher and a couple other people are talking about like old crazy coked out promos from WWE back in the 80s, right?
Right.
So we're just talking. I'm like, oh, this Don Morocco one, this Roddy Piper one, this Macho Man one, so on and so forth. And then somebody else chimes in and he's like, oh man, I love that Morocco when he, beats up the dude while he's eating the meatball sandwich. And it's Dreamer. And I'm like, I'm partial to the powdered donut one. And I'm like, you ever see this Piper one? You ever see this one? And then me and Dreamer are just talking about like our favorite crazy old WWF coked out promos. And then we watch the Young Bucks and Jigsaw and Quack have their match. And then show's over, go out to the car. My wife, myself, and the rest of the folks that I'm driving with are driving home. My wife's like, oh, how was the show? And at that point, it dawned on me that I was backstage at the ECW arena shooting the shit with Tommy Dreamer. And I'm like, that just happened. Like, I was at the shows when he was, like, choke slammed out, like, above the entranceway through 3 tables. And me and my brother rushed to get as much of the remnants of the broken table as we could out to our car as quickly as we could. And, like, now he's just a dude that I was backstage talking with. But he's not just a dude. He was Tommy Dreamer at the ECW arena. And I was just talking to him about old coked out promos. And it was awesome.
Like, if that was 13 to 15 years earlier, you would have killed to talk to Tommy Dreamer backstage at the ECW arena. And now it's just kind of just something that happened.
Like, it was something that happened, and it didn't dawn on me until, like, I was driving home, how cool of a moment that was. And my brother, who used to go to the shows with me, when I got home and it was a reasonable hour, I called him up. And he's like, "Why are you calling me?" And I'm like, "I have to tell you this story." And I told him, and he's like, "I still have that part of that table at the house." And I'm like, like, he doesn't watch wrestling really much anymore, but like, he still remembers those days of going to the ECW shows.
Do you have a specific memory as an ECW fan? Maybe it is that table moment, but one going to the ECW arena as a fan that really sticks out in your mind as a story that's worth sharing.
I have a bunch, like, we used to get there real super early just so, because we would never buy like reserve seats, or very rarely buy reserve seats, only because we never knew how many people were going. It would always be myself, my brother Tony, and my one friend Brian. And then it could be anywhere from like 1 to 6 other people. So it would be very difficult to buy like reserve seats because you never knew how many people were going. It was just like, we're going to get bleachers. Whoever gets there early, and we'll, save what we can of whoever's going to be here. And if the opportunity arises to upgrade our tickets and they have enough together, so on and so forth, we will. But very rarely were we able to do that. When it was like just myself, my friend Brian, my brother Tony, usually just the three of us, we had a much better opportunity to upgrade our tickets. So the second time I ever went to the ECW arena was October 28th, 1995. It's as though I remember this date, and made sure that my wedding fell on that date so I would never forget my wedding date.
Smart.
It was Cactus Jack, Tommy Dreamer, Terry Funk is in Tommy Dreamer's corner, Raven is in Cactus's corner. It's a very infamous moment in ECW history, the fire chair at the ECW arena. So this has never been released. It's been talked about in Mick Foley's book. The clips that they show, they clipped it up very, very much for the ECW TV. But since I was in the bleachers and I was on camera side, I'm all over it. The 17-year-old Leonard F. Chikarason wearing his Public Enemy shirt, maybe about 150 pounds lighter than I am today. So what happens is, you've seen people do like stunts with fire before in wrestling, right? And you've seen the Japanese stuff, I'm sure, of Cactus or Terry Funk or whomever in FMW in those days do stuff with the chairs with fire, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this time what it was, instead of a towel wrapped around a chair, it was a towel like duct taped to the chair, right? Like they had folded it up into like a little pillow as though it was like the cushion, right?
Sure.
That was duct taped to the chair. And later, from reading Foley's book and other stories, instead of dousing the towel with whatever igniting agent it was, they dunked the entire chair with the towel on it in kerosene.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, so Funk has the flaming branding iron. Cactus brings out the chair. They wrest the branding iron away from Terry Funk, and they put the branding iron to the towel on the chair, right? And when this happens, the entire building gets like 20 degrees warmer. It was like a fireball, right? It was like whoosh, and it's like, oh boy, it's bad, right? So what's allegedly going to happen is Cactus is going to attempt to hit Terry Funk with the chair. He's going to roll out of the way. Cactus is going to attempt to hit Terry Funk with the chair again. Terry Funk is going to roll out of the ring. Cactus is going to go out after him with the chair. The lights are going to go off. Dreamer and Raven are going to brawl up to the Eagle's Nest. So when the lights come back on, Terry Funk is laid out, and Dreamer is crucified up in the Eagle's Nest by Raven, right? So most of those things still happen, but one other variable also happened. Cactus goes to hit Terry Funk with the chair. He rolls out of the way. Cactus goes to hit Terry Funk with the chair. Terry Funk rolls out of the ring. Cactus goes to throw the chair at Terry Funk outside the ring, and the towel dunked in kerosene, duct taped to a chair, comes off the chair and goes into the front row. Then the lights go out. So the flaming towel comes off the chair, and it was one of those things that happened in like slow motion. Like, if you've ever been in a car crash, or if you've ever been like in one of those instances where it's almost as though time slows down because your mind is trying to process this giant whipping ball of flame comes off the chair and into the front row, and then the lights go off. Now, because the chair and the towel were dunked in kerosene, as Cactus was trying to hold it, like little balls of fire were dripping off of the chair and landing in the ring and starting little fires in the ring. So there's all these little fires in the ring. The towel is in the front row. The lights are off in the building. So they decide, we need to put these fires in the ring out. I know what we'll do. We'll shoot a fire extinguisher at them. So now it's filled up with more like the fire extinguisher carbon monoxide smoke as well. Surprisingly, everyone is making a mad dash to get the hell out of this building. That was a Saturday. The previous Saturday, had just broken my leg. So I had a giant cast on my leg and crutches, and I was trying to get out of the bleachers while the building was possibly on fire, and everybody else was rushing out of the building. So the whole way home, it was me, my friend Brian, my brother Tony. We're like, ECW's done. Like, they're closing their doors. They killed someone. Like, they lit a fan on fire accidentally. They're done. There's no way they can continue after this. And this was back in the day of the rec.sports.pro-wrestling days. So we go back to his dorm room, my buddy Brian. We dial it up. We go to that, and there's no results for the show. And I'm like, that's weird. And then we go to the ECW website, and obviously they're not going to have anything there because, you know, it's 1995. And I'm like, maybe they'll have something up on Monday. And I'm like, I wonder if the show is going to be on Tuesday. And then the show was on Tuesday. And I'm like, they're going to have to talk about it. And then they didn't. And I'm like, well, I guess it didn't happen. And then we just all moved on with our lives.
But it did happen, and you know it did.
It did happen, and I knew it. And, you know, when my wife and I were choosing our date for the wedding, you know, they have the big calendar there. They're like, oh, here are the dates that we have available. We're looking to do a Saturday. And the Saturdays that were available were the 21st and the 28th. And I'm like, we're getting the 28th. And my wife knew, but I don't think she knew at the time because she was in wedding planning mode. But the reason I chose that day was because that is a day that lives in infamy in my mind. It's a red letter date in history, like November 5th, 1955. That's my November 5th, 1955. It's a date I'll never forget. My other friend, Brian, his daughter was also born on October 28th as well. So she gets extra presents on her birthday.
Fantastic. Did nobody think that fire would melt the tape off of the chair?
But again, I'd love to know what the logic is, and I'm not sure that Terry Funk and Cactus Jack, Mick Foley, want to talk a lot about that these days. But again, I can't imagine what the logic behind that was, because they had done the fire chair before in a different way, and then this time, like, you could just tell something was wrong. Like, when he's holding the chair and the little drops of fire are coming off and starting the small fires in the ring, like, I've never seen that. I like that point, 1995, the FMW stuff. I'm like, I never saw that happen before with the fire chair. I'm like, they used, like, there's something wrong. And then, yes, there was something extremely wrong.
What happened to the fan?
He actually ended up suing, and he ended up suing ECW and Mick Foley. And he actually ended up not winning the case.
Interesting. I feel stupid because I just reread Have a Nice Day. I'm going through Foley's 4 books, and I just read it. So, like, a lot of that ECW stuff is fresh, and I remember the fire chair, but obviously not that vividly. or I think, as you mentioned, it might be a sore subject, especially since it was only 4 years old at the time when Have a Nice Day came out. So I'm sure he was just like, she's probably like, yeah, this happened. Well, let's talk about some other things that in ECW.
Yeah, he like I doesn't get much coverage in the book, and I know even in the audio book version it's abridged, so there's a lot of stuff missing from the audiobook version, and that's totally not in the audiobook version.
You mentioned there the crucifixion thing they were doing with Dreamer. Were you there for the crucifixion of Sandman?
I was. At the time, it was no different than anything else that was going on at ECW at the time. Now, obviously, all the behind-the-scenes stuff that happened with Kurt Angle being there, you know, the big blow-ups, and obviously you find out more what happened with the Rise and Fall of ECW documentary that WWF put out. But yeah, I'm just like, well, this is par for the course for ECW. You know, a year ago I saw them light a guy on fire, so
right.
You know, this is kind of like a lateral move.
I think it just like because like the first I had actually heard of it was the Rise and Fall documentary, and I was like, yeah, the crucifixion, yeah, whatever. But I was like, oh, that's like Sandman's kid standing in the ring right there.
Mm-hmm.
That was a little, that was the thing that kind of was like, well, all right.
It was a different time in the world of wrestling back in the 90s, man. It was wild and free. And was that the NXT song?
Wild and Young.
Wild and Young. They were wild and young in ECW back in 95, man.
Why did you have to remind me of that terrible song?
What was it? I did a podcast with somebody the other day, and they rickrolled me with the Biggie Langston NXT theme, which apparently is like a big joke that I was unaware of.
Is it? I think that song is legitimately pretty okay and way better than whatever his WWE theme is.
There's a group of people that really dislike it, or like they like it in a very ironic sort of way.
I don't like those people.
Well, I like everybody. Everybody who likes their wrestling, however they like it, I'm all right with that.
Well, you just did their podcast. You have to say that.
No, I did it a while ago.
Oh, okay.
And, I try to be clandestine when I badmouth other podcasts, but if you ask me, I'll tell you.
Yeah, you are diplomatic with your podcast review tweets.
I try.
Yeah. So I guess we should talk a little bit about Chikara. That was a pretty big part of your I guess that's what probably most everybody listening to this knows you from.
Probably. They don't know me from being on Howard Stern because I was forced to use a different name. They don't know me from my Simpsons knowledge. So yeah, I guess Chikara would be what it is.
That's right. You were on Howard Stern, but you were wearing a Sweet and Sour shirt and a Chikara hat. You were representing, despite the fact you some fake name.
It's actually that's a good story too. I know we'll talk about Chikara. We'll talk about Chikara.
No, I actually way want to hear more about the Howard Stern show. About Chikara.
So just as much, there was a time where my fandom was like equally split between like Simpsons, comic books, wrestling, and Howard Stern. I was a huge Howard Stern fan. Going all the way back to the old Channel 9 shows back from the 90s, and because we didn't have them in our area, but some of my uncles were over the like long haul truckers, and as a kid, and I say kid, I was 12 or 13, in 1990, whatever it was, and I would go on trips with them, and they'd listen to Howard Stern. I'm like, oh, this is cool. We'd go on trips to New York. I'm like, oh, Howard Stern, this is cool. Channel 9 show. I'm like, oh, this guy's really cool. So when it finally came to our area, I was a huge fan, getting all the back catalog once the internet is available to you to access that sort of stuff. And every couple months, every year, every 2 years, it's kind of arbitrary when they would do it. They would have like the super fan thing, win some sort of prize, whatever it is. And every year they would have it. Every year, every time they have it, I would send in my entry. Never hear anything back. So summer of 2011, I hear back. I get a phone call while I'm at work, the super secret science job, and it's a number I don't recognize, so I don't answer it. And I go and I check the message, and it's Will, who's one of the producers for the Howard Stern show, and he's like, hey, we got your application. We're going to do a test, questionnaire to see if you are going to be on the show. So I immediately call back, and I'm like, oh, hey, sorry, I was at work. Let's get down to business. Let's do this. And they go through the questions. It's 10 questions, and I got one wrong. And it was actually the question, and I don't remember a lot of the other questions, like maybe like here or there I do, but the one question that I got wrong was, what was the college that Fred went to? And if you're not a Howard Stern fan, like a lot of these names don't make any sense. Fred Norris, who was the sound person on the Howard Stern show, what college did he go to? I couldn't remember. It was Eastern Connecticut, and I had said Western Connecticut. I was very close. They're like, okay, we'll go over some other applicants and we'll call you back. So a week later, I recognize the number. They call me back. They're like, yeah, you're one of the last couple of guys. We're going to ask you some personality questions just to see where you fit on the show. Like, how long you've been listening? Who do you like? Who do you not like? What don't you like about the show? Anything interesting about you? And I tell them that I do professional wrestling stuff. They're like, oh, you're like one of those WWE guys. I go, no, I do the commentary for, a smaller promotion. The line that I still use to this day, whatever status Chikara is in, obviously right now, no status, but it still exists. I have DVDs, I have MP4s. Chikara is going to exist forever as far as I'm concerned. I say it's like that stuff that you see on Mondays, but better, is what I would always say. And that
Nice.
that was always, whether it was Chikara, whether it's AIW that I work for now, whether it's Evolve, Dragon Gate, whoever I work for, that's what I would always say. So I get a third call, and that one's like, okay, you're in. You're one of the 3 guys. And they're like, there's one problem. They're like, your name is too obnoxious. I go, what do you mean? They're like, Howard is not going to put up with calling you Leonard F. Chikarason. That's too much. He goes, one guy's name is Pete, the other guy's name is Joe. And I go, well, how about they're like, no. It was like, how about we just call you Joe? Because it was one guy was Pete, one guy was Mike. He goes, it needs to be simple. It needs to be a simple name that Howard's not getting tripped up on your name, because that's going to be a whole thing and we need to move the game along.
Really, like, Leonard's going to be a problem?
Apparently it was. He told me my name was obnoxious.
Rude.
So while all this is going on, my wife is pregnant. We went in July, so she was like 6 months pregnant. We go to New York. It was a really cool experience. Our team won. I did get a question wrong, but I did get 2 questions right that nobody knew the answer to, whether it be the other super fans that I was on the team with or the people from the show. And it was actually a weird way that they did it on the show. Was usually they have the super fans compete against each other. This time it was 3 super fans versus 3 people from the show, that being Fred Norris, Gary Delabate, Baba Booey, and Howard himself. And even during the question and answer part at the beginning, Howard talked to me the longest because I knew to hit some hot button comic book stuff with him, like to keep it simple, because he talks comic books, but he's not as into comic books as, say, you or I.
Right.
But I knew to hit like some hot button things, and he talked to me a little bit longer than the other guys, so that was kind of cool. We won. I got $5,000, and I got a cruise that I couldn't go on because the cruise was scheduled and non-transferable. It was scheduled the weekend that the baby was born.
Of course it was.
Of course it was.
Probably the week of Born to Be Wired, too, if you did it back in the day.
If they were able to turn back the clocks. No, it was actually the weekend of the there were 2 CHIKARA shows that weekend, and I couldn't be there because the baby was born first and foremost, obviously, and then the cruise on top of it. Like, I can't go to the cruise. But it was the Tennessee, North Carolina shows. Oh,
those are great shows too.
The one with Kana versus Sarah Del Rey.
A very good show.
So while the baby was born on a Wednesday, and the cruise was scheduled for that weekend, so we had just gotten the baby home that Saturday. We're getting him all situated, and he's a baby, he's this little tiny thing. He's crying, he's screaming, everything. And then my phone rings, and it was my reminder call for the pickup for the cruise. And I'm just like, yeah, this isn't happening. I gotta take care of a baby.
Did you at least get to pass it off to anybody else to use?
No, it was non-transferable.
See, I thought when I hear non-transferable, I'm like, you can't use it any other week, but man, that's a shame.
Right, because it was like a Bud Light party cruise or something, and I'm like, well, can't we move it to and the promotions people at Sirius were very very considerate, very, very helpful, very good at returning my calls and really trying to work with me. But the thing is, because it was a sponsored cruise, they're like, well, we could if they come back as another sponsor, but we don't know if they're going to come back as another sponsor. We don't know if they're going to be offering a similar thing. They could come back as a sponsor, excuse me, but it may not be a cruise, or it may be something else that they offer, and that's why we can't move it to something else or someone else.
Gotcha. Well, that's a shame. At least you don't hold your kid accountable for it.
No, I don't. And he actually, the money that I won went into starting his whatever college savings, whatever that is going to be in 18 years, Is college even going to be a thing? Is the government still a thing as this is being recorded? Right. I don't know, Kevin. All I know is that comic books come out on a Wednesday, and that's the one thing that I know and I can hold true and dear to.
Well, as a Simpsons fan, you'll appreciate this. I was watching the X-Files episode just yesterday, a great one. As a quick aside, the moment where Homer says, as a representative of the United States, let me be the first to say, and then he freaks out because he accidentally stepped in the fire. Made me laugh so hard I rewound it about 10 times. The best thing about Simpsons is rewatching them and getting jokes that I forgot about and finding them again. But they were telling horror stories, and they don't show the story, but they just show the end where Bart says to Homer, and that's how much college is going to cost for Maggie. And Homer has a freak out.
Yeah, and I was going to say Homer has an appropriate freak out.
Right. Yes. So I can only imagine what it's going to be like for you in however many years it is until your boy goes to college, and that's going to be fun. But at least you got $5,000 towards it, if nothing else.
I'm rusty with my Simpsons. I haven't gotten a chance to watch as much as I used to way back in the day. It got to a point where my brother and I knew so much in watching The Simpsons. We would watch the episodes in syndication and race to see who could figure out what scenes were cut out for syndication.
Wow.
Yes, it was deep. It was very deep.
That's pretty darn deep.
And it's still in there. It still rattles around a little bit. I don't know. Do you listen to the Jeff Rubin podcast?
I don't.
It's good. It's not on any sort of network. It's just Jeff Rubin's show. I don't watch Breaking Bad, but he just did like a Breaking Bad wrap-up episode. But he does a lot of very interesting, like, pop culture-y guests on his shows. Like, he did an episode with Weird Al Yankovic's agent.
Oh my God, I gotta listen to that.
Yes. It's so compelling. It's really good. They did, like, you know, he did like one like crazy like pop culture conspiracy theories and stuff about how the Rebecca Black song is tied into the JFK assassination and like stuff like that. He has like a college professor who does a course at NYU about games and specifically like Monopoly, so on and so forth, all this crazy stuff. But there is a bar in Brooklyn that does a Simpsons trivia night, like your typical bar trivia night, but it's all Simpsons stuff. And it's only seasons 2 through 10.
Oh God, that's perfect.
Right. Okay. Right. So that's my wheelhouse, but they did it. And I'm like, I'm so rusty. I am so rusty because there was stuff that I should know and I totally did not know. And I was ashamed listening to the podcast.
Oh man, that's a bad feeling. There's so much, you know, oh my gosh. I just feel like with the Simpsons, there's so much esoteric stuff that they do that they probably have in that trivia contest that you're like, I'm a huge fan. Then you hear that and you're like, I'm a nobody.
Right. It was like, no, I just think I'm rusty. I need to get back. I need to get back on the horse. I need to, I need to relearn this information.
I will still contend that the best episodes of The Simpsons are the best episodes of any television show out there.
And yes, I will say, you know, they say season 2, and I can pinpoint it. I can, and maybe you can. And, you know, this is how you, to me, and again, listen, if you're a Simpsons fan, you're a Simpsons fan. But for me, the pinpoint is the softball episode, Homer at the bat. From that episode to like season 10, 11-ish, you can take that run of a TV show and put it up against any run of any TV show in the history of the world, and they can't come close to that run of The Simpsons. Like, even like a show like a Community or a 30 Rock or a Modern Family, like whatever the people watch these days. 22, 24 episodes a season, you'll maybe get like 3, maybe 4 clunkers. There was a run there from like seasons 4 to season 7 where The Simpsons were doing 22 home runs every season. Like, there was not a bad episode. Like, you can try, and people are like, oh, it was a Lisa episode. Oh, it was a Marge episode. And I tell you to go screw, because they were great.
I think Lisa may be like my favorite character of that family. Like, Homer's the funniest, but man, those Lisa episodes are like some of the most genuinely touching television shows I've ever seen. Now,
I'll say that, but to just throw the caveat on there is when they do like Marge Bart episodes, those ones are great.
Absolutely.
Like the shoplifting episode.
Oh, perfect.
Or the one where he shoots the bird with a BB gun. Like, those are great emotional touchstone episodes.
Absolutely. Now, do you have an episode in mind where Simpsons jumped the shark?
It's difficult to say for me. And it's not, I wouldn't say jump the shark so much, but it was more so when I realized that I had outgrown The Simpsons. Like, there was an episode maybe from like, and again, I'm going to mess up the season numbers, but it was like 05 or 06. And there was an episode that was like a lot of iTunes references and a lot of like Britney Spears references and a lot of like some other reference that I didn't get. And I'm like, oh, they're making pop culture references to the people who they want to be watching the show, not like timeless pop culture references that are going to more or less stand the test of time, because pop culture in the 90s was a little bit more hardy than pop culture of the 2000s. Like, it's going to stand the test of time better, where Simpsons was pulling their references from stands the test of time better from the 90s, whereas stuff that they were referencing in the mid-2000s are stuff that a lot of people have already forgotten about. So it wasn't that the show jumped the shark for me. It was just more like, they're not catering the show to me anymore, which is, a lot of people, I think, argument with Chikara at some points. But, like, I wasn't angry about it. It was like when I was a kid and I read Mad Magazine. And then there was a point where the humor in Mad Magazine was no longer, like, I didn't get it anymore. And it wasn't like it changed. It was still the same magazine, but the references they were making didn't make sense to me. So I wasn't getting the jokes. So I'm like, well, my pop culture dollar my pop culture time is to be spent elsewhere. I still fondly, remember the times that I read Mad Magazine and enjoyed those references, and I will always remember the times that I remember The Simpsons, and I eagerly await the time when my son is like 9 or 10, and I get to show him all those classic Simpsons episodes. Like, I'm looking forward to showing him that stuff.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's stuff I can rewatch over and over. It's timeless. It's perfect stuff. But the reason I asked about that is because in college, a buddy of mine who's, to this day, one of my few friends who can match up to me when it comes to just Simpsons love and knowledge and things of that nature, he asked me, he goes, when do you think Simpsons jumped the shark? Because obviously his feelings are the same, I think, as most Simpsons fans, as it was great for this run and then really just started to fall off a little bit, and then it kind of plateaued. And it's funny because we both came up with 2 episodes that were within like 5 episodes of each other in whatever season they're in. He says it's when Apu had the octuplets, and I say it's when Maude Flanders died. And we went and we looked when they came up, and we were stunned to see just how close they were in the Simpsons canon. So that's what I contend is when I think Simpsons jumped the shark.
I remember the episode, but I remember both episodes, obviously. And of I know a lot of times Flanders episodes weren't as great as everyone remembers them to be. There's a lot of good. Oh man, you're gonna make me go back and watch all this stuff now, aren't you?
You're welcome.
I think the octuplets episode has a lot more good jokes in it, like Gary Marshall, like the Gary Marshall voiced like carnival barker guy. The fact that Butch Patrick is in it, like a lot of little things like that. The fact that they were all dosing Manjula. The fact that Homer was trying to recreate like the most susceptible reasons to have a pregnancy happen, like with them being like the college or the high school kids and going off to war and
yes.
Blah, blah, blah. So I can't say it's that episode because there's like just off the top of my head, there's more I remember about that episode from the Maude Flanders episode. But I remember then with the Maude Flanders episode was when they were trying to get Homer was trying to get Ned dates, and he was making the dating video with the star wipes and all that sort of jazz there. I don't know.
Now keep in mind when I say jump the shark, I don't necessarily mean this episode was a complete
that was the pinnacle.
I don't mean like this episode was a clunker and everything else after that was just absolute garbage, but it was signifying the beginning of the end. For me, anyways.
Interesting. And okay, and let's just say that is, right? So that was the 240th episode. I'm doing some Googling, ladies and gentlemen.
Obviously.
I actually use Bing because I learned from the Amazing Spider-Man movie that all the cool kids use Bing.
That was the funniest criticism of that movie I'd ever seen.
Yes, so that's why I'm like, I'm going to use Bing because of that. Well, no, that's what Firefox had defaulted for me. And I'm just going to change it. So that was the 240th episode. So let's say of the previous 239 episode, maybe like 1% of them. I'll be generous and say 10% of them were bad. Okay, so they had 200 episodes of a great TV show prior to that.
Absolutely.
Any show today on TV, any show that came on TV within the last 10 years would murder for half of that.
Absolutely.
So if that's when it jumped the shark, that's when, hey man, so be it. I don't know. I'm so far removed from Simpsons stuff these days. I couldn't think of an exact moment where it jumped the shark for me,
I'm sure. Fair enough. This is still all very fresh in my mind. I was watching those cartoons religiously in college with friends because when you find people when you're like, you love the show as much as I do, let's watch all of it. So that's how things work. But Man, yeah. So I guess Chikara, after not talking about it for another 20 minutes or so. Now, you're also a massive comic book fan. I think most people know that.
Yes.
You got into Chikara through comics in a sort of roundabout way.
Maybe, like I said, I definitely might have joked about it. Maybe in an interview with Gavin from the Fourth Letter, I might have joked about it. Maybe somebody else can point it out to me and say what was said on commentary. But no, it was the people who run Chikara, board of directors, so on and so forth. There was someone previous to me. I don't know if they were officially called the director of fun. But as Chikara got bigger, the role on screen needed to be filled and needed to be more out there, and they decided who more personable than the guy who's going to be driving the ring truck to Pittston.
Right, because you can definitely spot a Leonard F. Chikarason in the crowd in some of those earlier shows.
Yeah, a lot of the Emmaus shows. Actually, the Young Lions Cup show where Sweeney officially debuts, my wife and I had just proposed to her the day before.
Aw.
Yes. So it's like, hey, honey, after I proposed to you with the ring and an issue of Ultimate Spider-Man, let's go to a wrestling show tomorrow to celebrate. And somehow she said yes to all of it.
Keep her.
Of course.
Well, it was great because I was watching those early Emmaus shows in 2004, and I was like, and I would spot you in the crowd and be like, here, this guy's gonna go from wearing his T-shirt over a long sleeve shirt and jeans to wearing nice looking suits every show.
Nice looking suits. Bryce, the other day when I was talking to him, he asked me if I still had that ratty old suit.
And do you?
I think so. I don't know. And in the move, I think it may have been misplaced.
Could have put it on eBay.
You know what? Actually, I have the Chikara tie that I had that had the Chikara logo on it.
Oh man.
Somebody actually offered to buy it from me.
Ah.
And again, pulling the curtain back, little do they know they can go to like any cafe press type shop like I did and just get any logo they want on any article of clothing.
But it's not the Chikara.
Oh, it's not the Chikara. There was actually two Chikara ties because I am a bigger man, both in height and girth, and I usually need a longer tie. And what the cafe press type people consider to be an extra large is not what the rest of the world considers to be an extra large tie. So I had to go through like another service where they actually had the dimensions of how long the tie would be. So I'm like, okay, that one will be long enough. And then the first one was like turning brown from me sweating so much.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fat man who sweats a lot.
Hey, listen, I've ruined many a collared shirt for that too, so I get what you're coming from.
Right. So if it makes you feel any better, I still my everyday attire, and I'm sure if you've seen me at a event that I'm on, once usually I'm wearing a long sleeve white T-shirt with a black T-shirt over it. That is my uniform, and it's not a Jeff Goldblum Brundle fly sort of reason. It's just because I don't know. That's what I wear.
Usually, you'll have the Chikara hat in your bag filled with comic books, though, too.
That is correct. That is correct. I do need. I'll tell you this. It killed me when the first run of Chikara hats were ruined. I bought one, and I'm like, all right. And as I mentioned, I'm a fat man. I sweat a lot, so it got real cruddy and crusty. And then when I went to go buy another one, the previous ones were all destroyed because some of the students had packed them wrong, and it like ripped all the brims on them, like it split them all right in half.
Get out of here! I did not know that.
Yeah. So again, behind the scenes of Chikara, when my wife was working merchandise, like around like 2010, 2011, and she would hand the report back in at the end of the night of like, here's what's sold. Like she kept meticulous notes on everything. So she would hand that back in, and I would always tell her to lie and say that tons of people were asking for the baseball hats to come back, whether they were or weren't, just so that they would get the baseball hats back so I can get another one.
I remember when I was watching my first Chikara shows with a couple of friends, we'd see those hats all the time in the crowd. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, why do they not print these again? I would buy one in a heartbeat if they did. And I did. The minute the hat came back, I got one.
And they changed the beanies. The first run of the knit hats were a larger knit hat that you can like fold up and reveal the Chikara logo. And there were two different ones. There was black with an orange logo, and there was blue with a white logo. And I bought both of them. One I lost in not a car accident, but like I was driving home and I got a flat tire and I think it fell out of the car, and I was more concerned about getting a tire on the car than finding the hat. And then a student from CHIKARA had picked it up for me, and I'll say that as nicely as I can. He was nice enough to pick it up for me. I don't want to say that he stole it. And when I called him out on it, because he was wearing it at a CHIKARA show, and it's a hat that they have not printed in 5 years, and the only person who had it was me, and he was wearing it. I called him out on it, and I said, I go, give me my hat back. And he goes, oh, I'm sorry. You know what, let me take it home and I'll wash it for you, and I'll bring it back at the next show. And when I confronted him, it was at the Trocadero show, Never Compromise. So the fact that there was never another show, I'm never getting my hat back.
Some conspiracy theorists would say the stealing of your hat was the first of many events to roll into the death of CHIKARA.
I would certainly hope not.
Some conspiracy theorists might.
Oh boy.
I'm expecting something on oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of the website now that had those tremendous podcasts about him. Atomic Elbow, I think is that.
Oh no, Danielle on the Mandible Claw.
Mandible Claw, that's what it was. Yes.
Yes.
Her and her co-host had those bananas podcasts. My
favorite part of those podcasts were the fact that one person would come in through one audio channel, and then the other person would come in through the other audio channel, made for a pristine listening experience.
Listen, I would say more, but I can't say that certain other shows on the podcasting network that I am currently talking on have not had the same issues.
Oh boy.
I try to make my show pretty good. I can't hold hands for everybody else. I don't got time for that.
Outside of that, posting your podcast on YouTube is like that's another huge podcast pet peeve of mine.
Now exclusively on YouTube is, I presume, what you mean.
Exclusively on YouTube, I hate with a white fiery hot passion, and because of that, like, people who also post their shows in all the other channels and on YouTube, and I'm like, it just makes me think of the podcast that exists only on YouTube and make me angry.
Oh, well, I can tell you that it's funny because I feel like there was a lot of times where I would put or some of the more popular podcasts we'd have would go on YouTube, just for the sake of having content on YouTube. You know what?
Right.
And they don't get a fraction of the listens on YouTube that they do in other places.
That's what I try to tell people, but no one listens to me.
It's like I was even talking to Tom Green because he used to put all the Resto Folks episodes on YouTube, and I said, "Hey, what happened to putting them on there?" And he goes, "Too much time for not enough listens."
Mm-hmm.
I said, "Yeah, I completely believe you." Because after seeing the fan to fan with both Jagged and Drew Cordero one on YouTube, and I think one of them has like 20 views on it or something, which is certainly nowhere near what it would get on the website or on iTunes.
This is not the time for plugs, but one of the other podcasts that I do with my buddy Brian, the Dad Distractions podcast, which is supposed to be about us being parents, but it always devolves into other conversations about other things, and we always try to wrap it back into parenting. He just started putting the podcasts up on YouTube, and we had a very heated email exchange about it earlier this week. And when it all came down to it, I'm like, listen, I go, it's your podcast. I'm your guest on it. I've given you my reasons why not to do it. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you're the one going to be doing it. So you're going to be the one to stop doing it eventually when you see it's not worth your time.
Right.
I go, you asked my opinion. I gave it to you. You disagreed with me. I'm going to save these emails in 2 months when you come back and say, yeah, I'm not doing that anymore.
Just to prove it. Leonard F. Chikarason was right.
No, I don't want to be right. I just want people to get the podcast in the best, most optimal way, and I think that putting it on YouTube is not that way.
But not putting it on iTunes either, according to you.
Well, listen, we're having problems. The Weekly Long Box is not on iTunes and has not been on iTunes for almost a month.
I thought it's been downloading for me. I'm pretty sure.
See, it's downloading for you, but there's a lot of people that are having problems with it. I thought it was just me at first, and usually if it's just me, then I'm like, I don't care. But if it's other people, like I'm getting like 2 to 3 tweets a week of different people saying like, yeah, it's not showing up on iTunes. Like, yeah, all the past episodes have deleted. And I guess they changed servers for the website. I guess they go through Squarespace for the whole Grizzly Bear network. And Squarespace did something where they updated their interface to like version 6, and it caused all the RSS feeds to get screwed up, and there in turn caused all the iTunes feeds to get messed up. Whereas if you go to the Grizzly Productions website of the 6 podcasts that are on the network, I think only 2 are on there right now.
What's really interesting you mentioned that is I was told to download this podcasting app the other day. It was a paid app. I can't remember what the name of it is, but I was looking. I was like, okay, I'll use this, and I was searching for all of my podcasts to put on there. Literally every show from the Grizzly Productions family, including my Breakfast with Chikara, which is not a new episode since October of 2012, was on there, but not the Weekly Long Box.
I want to let you, if there's a listener out there of the Weekly Long Box who's listening to this, because I did plug this on Weekly Long Box when it comes out for some.
Oh, yay! Excellent.
Yes, we're supposed to badmouth Doctor Who on this podcast.
Oh, it's the worst.
I'm not allowed to on Weekly Long Box.
What's funny is I was at a party a couple weeks ago, and I was amongst most Doctor Who fans. But I have a few friends who don't get it, right? And I don't get it either. And I was just like. It's like, what? Like, guys, Doctor Who sucks, and I could see their faces change from like having a good time to, you did you just? And my friend was like, look, Kevin, it's not for me either. Let's just leave it at that. I was like, no, I want to see how angry these people are gonna get over a TV show like this.
Well, the thing is, I can't say Doctor Who sucks because I haven't watched enough Doctor Who to know it sucks. I've only seen 1 episode of Doctor Who, and it was perfectly fine. Like, it wasn't horrible, and it was actually bordering on pretty good. However, I don't have tons of time to watch a ton of new stuff, but I know it's the hot button issue to get Todd, just like Todd knows my hot button issue is Ryan Reynolds. So, of course, we needle each other back and forth with those sort of things.
Don't even talk to me about Ryan Reynolds and Green Lantern.
Oh, you mean Ryan Reynolds, who killed 2 Green Lantern franchises, the movie franchise and the cartoon franchise, because his shitty Green Lantern movie caused those shitty toys not to sell. So therefore, no toy companies would stock the Green Lantern animated toys, and therefore they didn't sell. So therefore the higher up muckety muck said, well, the toys from the cartoon didn't sell. Why bother making the cartoon? Well, no, the toys didn't sell because no stores would carry them because they still had all these peg warmers of horrible Green Lantern toys that from the movie that nobody wanted. And like, that's not me speculating. Like, that's the truth.
Right,
that is
right.
the
Oh, yeah.
100% truth.
Yeah, there's numbers and things out there to prove all that nonsense.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's right. Oh my goodness, I don't even know what to say. I don't know what to say about this. Green Lantern was it was my favorite comic book for a really long time. It's not so much anymore now that Jeff Johns isn't on it, but that's neither here nor there. And
I gave it a try. It just didn't work out. I thought the issue 20 that he did put a nice little bow on his story, specifically Sinestro's story, and maybe I'll revisit it again in the future. But right now, I've read Green Lantern for a long time. I'm moving on to some other stuff.
Right. Like, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Like, if I go outside and there's bad traffic, I think it's just a plot against me. So my favorite Marvel characters are the Fantastic Four, and my favorite DC for a longest time was Green Lantern. And the movies for them were awful. Like, the characters I care about the most had the worst movies. And I'm pretty sure it was a conspiracy against me.
I know that the Green Lantern one was also a conspiracy against me because they would come out in public and lie and point to the Green Lantern Secret Origins storyline that Johns did and say, like, hey, see this storyline? This was like almost like our Bible on the set while we were making the movie. And when the movie came out, they re-released that specific trade with a movie cover and a foreword by Ryan Reynolds where he talks about how much of this trade and this collection of the stories were based and inspired for the movie. Kevin, you read those stories, right?
Sure, yeah.
And you saw the horrible Green Lantern movie.
Mm-hmm.
None of that was in there, other than the fact that, like, there's a person named Green Lantern and there's a person named Sinestro. Those are the only similarities between those specific comics and that horrible, horrible movie.
There's no chance Ryan Reynolds read that. There's absolutely no way. They just
There's no chance Ryan Reynolds read, period.
the script or anything. They probably just said, "Hey, can we write this forward and put your name on it?" And he goes, "Am I going to make some money?" Yes. All right, do whatever you want.
Yeah, my hate for him though isn't because of like I hated him way before Green Lantern. Like he was terrible in that Blade movie. Like he got outacted by Triple H.
I did not see that.
It's not a good movie. It's the special effects are real bad. There's a fight scene at the end with Wesley Snipes and the head vampire. That is, the special effects were comical and laughable when the movie came out. So I can imagine they do not hold up whatsoever, 10 years later. And it was supposed to be set up to do a spin-off of the Ryan Reynolds character and whoever the female other character with him was, because Wesley Snipes' contract was up, where they wanted to keep making movies in that little world. And that movie bombed so horribly, they're just like, nope. And that was the beginning of Ryan Reynolds being box office poison.
Yeah. And wasn't good as Deadpool either, really.
Shame.
Let him never touch another movie again.
And then, like, he's still in talks. Like, if they're going to make a Deadpool movie, they're like, yep, Ryan Reynolds still in the running. And, like, when they were making a Flash movie, it's like, Ryan Reynolds is going to play the Flash. Now, and this was before he was going to play Green Lantern. If Ryan Reynolds was the Flash, and again, this is a podcast that people are listening to, I would have been in jail. Because Ryan Reynolds' blood would be on my hands. I'm not saying I would kill him, but I would badger him. Like, I would bash his face with my fists. Because as much as I love Green Lantern, I love me the Flash. I love me Wally West Flash. Like, that's my Flash. Like, that's some of the first Jeff Johns stuff that I read. And, like, those are some of the stories that I hold near and dear to my heart. And, like, that's why I can't get into the current Flash in the New 52, because I love that Wally West Flash stuff so much. And then I've gone back and gotten the Mark Waid stuff, and I've gotten like the Grant Morrison, the Mark Millar stuff, and I've grown to love Wally even more. So while I'm collecting all these back issues and falling so much more in love with Wally West, like my most hated actor is being rumored to be playing him in a movie, like I was through the roof. Like I was out of my mind angry. And like if I was a 10 angry for that, and when he was announced to be Hal Jordan as a Green Lantern, I was like a 9.5. I was able to simmer just a bit.
Well, the thing is, if they had this massive bomb with Green Lantern, or with Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern, and the thing about the cartoon not getting me made and toys not being sold and everything else, and then went on to cast him as the Flash, it would confirm everything I would think about DC and Warner Brothers in making those movies.
Right. They'd have no one to blame but themselves. And then even Marvel. Like, okay, even the X-Men stuff, that's at 20th Century Fox. Maybe they have a different set of eyes, but they're starting to get their act together now, too. They're like, we're going to reboot the Fantastic Four franchise to make it good. We're going to tie the X-Men First Class stuff into the previous X-Men movies. We're going to try to make the Amazing Spider-Man movies better. All this sort of stuff. And then, like, for them go like, yeah, we're making a Deadpool movie with Ryan Reynolds. It's like, nope, as good of decisions that you're making to try to make your side of the Marvel Universe better, the fact that Ryan Reynolds is even in contention to be an extra in one of your movies is a huge mistake.
And it's not, I can understand them being like, well, we want to keep continuity with the characters. You've had 3 Hulks. You can change Deadpool once.
I don't know.
This didn't mean to get you all fired up.
No, it's all right.
Actually, I kind of did. It was fun.
Listen, at least we can agree on Doctor Who being stinky.
Yeah, Doctor Who is no fun. I do think that that red-haired girl is very pretty, though. And I'm glad she's going to be in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, did you see the whole thing of, like, she shaved her head for the role? I guess she's playing Moondragon, and people went crazy!
Yeah, that's going to be fun. That cast is phenomenal. I'm a big fan of that. I also love, someone posted on Tumblr the other day, or maybe someone on Twitter, they were like, DC Comics is talking about how Wonder Woman is too confusing for viewers. Meanwhile, Marvel's going to have a talking raccoon with machine guns in a movie coming out next summer.
Well, that's the thing, though, man. They're giving that character the push. They know they have a quirky character there that, if done right, could be a huge success. Where 0 people were buying Rocket Raccoon merchandise, and when they relaunched the Bendis Guardians of the Galaxy book, like, he was the forefront character. Like
He was
they
on
were
the covers of a lot of them.
He was on the covers. They were selling coffee mugs. Like Marvel's big New York Comic Con exclusive that they're pushing is a Rocket Raccoon plush.
That's awesome. I'd love that. I'd really like a group plush too.
Oh, I'm with you, but because Marvel knows how they're going to take that character, they're going to take that quirky Rocket Raccoon character and make something of it, and make money of it. They're going to take something that was not in the purview of anyone and make money with it, whereas DC movie franchise is going to take someone that everyone knows and lots of people love and flush money down the toilet with it.
Yeah, Marvel's the best, and DC's kind of terrible. That's really what it boils down to.
They're trying, but they're like, it's like, well, I'm going to go up, I'm going to try to hit this baseball. It's like, all right, you're getting an A for effort, but you're getting an F for actually hitting the ball and making contact.
Well, for me, it's like Marvel had this elaborate plan with all these movies, how they're going to tie it to the Avengers. They presented the plan, they got the money, they made everything. Everything was smooth. DC, meanwhile, goes, oh, crap, Avengers made money. Quick, do movies. Just have them go fast now.
Right. And I don't know. I want there to be good DC movies, you know? I really do. I want all comic book movies to be good. But it's difficult when they come out and they stink. Like the Nolan Batman movies were really good. Like I even like Dark Knight Rises. There's a lot of plot holes in it, and it's definitely the movie itself suffers from having to follow the Dark Knight, the second one. Looking at the third one in a bubble by itself, it's a very good movie, but you're going to be forced to compare it to the previous one.
Right. I still want to know how Batman got back into Gotham.
You know how he did it?
How did he do it?
He's Batman.
Unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Listen, that is unacceptable for any other character in comicdom. I can make an argument for Batman getting out of any situation and beating any person. Like I would have back in the day when I used to play HeroClix. I don't know if you're aware of HeroClix.
I'm aware of HeroClix, though I did not play myself.
All right, so for the listeners at home, for the viewing audience at home who's streaming this live on their Zune on YouTube, HeroClix is a miniatures game, but it's like a very dumbed down miniature game where all the characters have dials on them and you roll dice and you compare the die roll to the number on your character against the person that you're attacking. Boom, it's a game. There's some strategy involved. It's a lot of fun. The sculpts got a lot better. I would play with a lot of people who cursory read comic books, like most of their comic book knowledge was from the HeroClix game itself. And I would get into heated arguments of no matter who they would bring up. I would make compelling, hard, factual arguments of why Batman could be anyone they could think of. It's like, how about the Hulk? And I'm like, here's a plan. I go, as long as Batman has time to plan, he could beat anyone. And Batman's whole thing is he has a plan for everyone.
Even getting back into Gotham.
He's Batman.
See, I feel like that's going to be somebody defending a WWE storyline one day to me that I'm trying to question. But it's Triple H. No, I don't want to hear it.
But it is. But it is Triple H. Triple H is the Batman of the WWE universe.
Don't say that. Don't want to dislike Batman.
All right, so then he's let's say now Deathstroke, maybe like the Ra's al Ghul of the WWE.
Yeah, okay, I'll accept that.
And that makes Stephanie Talia.
Yeah.
And that makes the Shield the League of Assassins. All right. That works.
Who's Bane?
The Ryback, maybe?
Okay. Paul Heyman would have to be the Penguin. Recasting
Paul Heyman's maybe the Riddler.
But he looks so much like Penguin.
And as much as it pains me to say, I guess like that makes Punk Batman.
Yeah, Punk. I can accept that.
I can't, but I'll begrudgingly. All right, Punk's Batman. I'd like to. Who would Brian be? He can't be Superman.
Oh no.
Brian maybe is Green Arrow.
Yeah. Okay. I could see that.
Maybe Blue Beetle, like Ted Kord Blue Beetle. I'd like to give him that.
Sure.
Oh boy.
We could go this whole
Nightwing. He's Nightwing. That's who he is. He's Dick Grayson Nightwing.
Okay.
All right.
Dick Grayson's not dead, right?
Did you read Forever Evil?
I read Forever. Oh well, okay. So everyone's dead.
Did you read Forever Evil?
Yeah. Okay. So he's like the one person that's alive.
Did you read, as I like to refer to them on the show by their full titles? I like to honor them with respect. Justice League 23.4 : Secret Society #1.
No, I did not.
Read Justice League 23.4 : Secret Society #1.
All right.
That and the Lex Luthor one are the only two of all 52 books. Those are the only two that actually tie in to Forever Evil.
Well, good, because those are two of like the 14 I didn't pick up because I'm smart.
So, but like the Lex Luthor one is almost like a prequel to issue 1, and then Secret Society is almost like here's what happens in between issue 1 and issue 2 of Forever Evil.
All right, I'll keep that in mind when I head to the shop this week.
Yes.
All right, we got to wrap. This is going to be the longest fan to fan ever if we don't put a. But we didn't even talk anything about anything.
We did. We talked about Doctor Who's sucking. We talked about The Simpsons. We talked about how not to make a fire chair. We talked about
ECW Arena a lot.
ECW Arena
I wanted. I got what I wanted.
I talked about one of the Wrestle Factory students stealing my hat and possibly somehow being involved with the T-Tour conglomerate. Possibly. I shouldn't have said that, but okay.
Hey, that was more me. I'll take onus on that.
All right. But no, there's a lot of stuff going on. I was very happy to see earlier this week on Twitter so many people with the I am Chikara hashtag. I was very happy when Icarus contacted me to be involved with whatever he's trying to do. And obviously he is one person, I am one person, but it's good to see so many people, and especially a lot of people who I personally thought did not like what Chikara had become. Kind of show some support, and I was also very surprised to see some people who I thought would support Chikara not support Chikara. But listen, to each his own. Everybody's moved on. You know, I've moved on, but like I said before, I've still got a bin in my basement of every Chikara show on DVD from 2004 up to 2010, and then I have all the MP4s from whenever they start doing the MP4s and stuff. You know, Chikara is going to live on as long as you remember it, just like ECW is going to live on as long as you remember it. Mid-South is going to live on just as long as you remember it. And yes, that's some rarefied air that I'm putting Chikara in, and maybe I'm a little biased, but that's just me. So, yeah, you know, if you really want Chikara back, follow Icarus on Twitter, follow me on Twitter, and who knows, maybe you'll be part of whatever he has planned. He's keeping me in the dark a little bit as well, and I think that's for the best. But I'm doing other things as well, other than trying to help Chikara.
Well, before you get into the plugs, and I'm going to completely derail your segue, I do want to ask, is there one specific Chikara memory or moment that you hold most fondly?
You know what? I tweeted it the other day, and it's obviously my own personal story. And I think I've told this story before, but that's okay. I want to make this podcast go at least 7 hours. Like, we're going to go like Dane Cook, Dave Chappelle stand-up level lengths on this podcast. But the first time that I did commentary was with Sweeney at the 2005 Cybernetico, which was like the crazy like hour-plus long one, like almost an hour and a half long.
Oh, it's almost 2 hours long. It's like an hour 44.
Right. So that was the first time I ever did commentary. I was going to do commentary at the August 2005 show at the Arena, and I got cold feet, so they decided to put Eric Gargiulo on commentary instead of me. Word got back to other people in the locker room. The next set of shows in September, Sweeney came up to me, and he had said, "What's this I hear about you chickening out on commentary?" He might not have used those words. And I told him, and he said, "Next show, you and I are going to call a match together." Little did I know it would be a match that is almost 2 hours long.
What a rib.
From there, I've been doing commentary ever since. So I'll always remember that being the first time that I did commentary. I have tons and tons of great memories. I've met tons and tons of great people, both in Chikara and people who've come to be part of Chikara, to support Chikara in any way possible. I've met lots and lots of awesome people, and a lot of the people that I consider the closest friends are people that I've met over the last 7 or 8 years with my involvement in Chikara, even though a lot of them don't return my emails.
And I will say, just no BS, not just saying it's because you're on the air, because I think a lot of people agree with me. It's funny that you had cold feet on commentary back then, because I think you've really grown to be at least one of my favorite commentators to listen to, but also one of the best that's out there right now.
Well, I appreciate both those sentiments, and I do hear other people saying that. I honestly think I'm a horrible commentator.
Well, of course. I think everybody thinks they're bad at whatever they do.
Because in my mind, I hear Bryce and I hear Gavin, and when Mantis gets on commentary, and I look at myself compared to them, like I look at myself like below them. People like Jagged, who took like doing took like water to doing commentary, like he was a natural at it. But in my mind, I don't compare myself to them. In my mind, I'm comparing myself to 1995 ECW Joey Styles. I'm comparing myself to 1990, 1991 Jim Ross in NWA WCW. And in my mind, and like I'm comparing myself to like Jim Cornette on commentary. I'm comparing myself to Paulie on commentary. And in my mind, I'm never going to be them. So I just have to work harder to be them.
Well, you know what? Fine. I'm just going to compare this podcast to some other immeasurable thing that I'll never reach, and then I'll just never be happy and satisfied. Sounds like a good few things.
Like the Never Gets Old podcast.
Sure. Or the Low Road to Moral Success podcast.
Oh, I miss the Low Road to Moral Success.
Everybody does. Vin Gerard, what is your problem?
Vin Gerard's problem is that Snip Stamp finally took off.
Ah. Yes.
And I'm very happy for him. He is very busy. He is one of the many people who are big leaguing me on emails these days. But I understand why he's doing it. The other people I don't understand. But every now and then, like, he'll respond to an email and he'll be like, I miss seeing you, and I miss seeing you in April and Asa. And I'm like, you know where we live. Stop by anytime. You're welcome to stop in, pop in whenever you want. And it's just like he's just extremely busy because he's more or less a one-man operation with Snip Stamp. He has like one of his other buddies who's also like managing like 6 bands plus doing a 9-to-5 job who's helping him. And then he had recently attempted to get an intern, but that did not pan out the way that he had hoped it would. So it's essentially one man trying to cover all this. And did he announce it officially yet? I don't know. And I don't care if he did or didn't. But I think starting this month, he is going to be in all of the TGI Fridays in the greater Pennsylvania, New Jersey area. Like Snip Stamp table tents are going to be in TGI Fridays.
Ooh, that's really nifty.
Yes, which is a pretty big like corporate-y sponsor type thing to get. And like I said, he's busy. He's a busy man. I miss doing the show with him. Yeah,
he's come a long way from having to live in dumpsters.
That's right, a dumpster by my house.
Exactly.
I think that was the lie we used to tell there too.
Uh-huh.
And then this is another good Chikara memory. The the event center update where I put the match together of him and Drake Younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that exactly.
I had missed the show where he had won the Young Lions Cup back from Fire Ant because I was on vacation.
You're on West Coast Chikara business.
That's right, West Coast Chikara business. But while I was on that trip, I took some personal time for myself and I took the family to a water park. And I am a clumsy, uncoordinated man who has knee problems to begin with. I've had arthritis since I was 18. And I slipped and fell at the water park. And I'm like, oh, I just heard something. It's fine. And then we get back from the trip, and the entire back of my knee is black. And whatever I pulled in my knee all drained into my foot. So my foot and ankle were like swollen up like 3 times the size. And then we had to go film that vignette.
That must have been fun.
That was a lot of fun. And I'm almost certain that he was drunk during it.
That I would wager to say maybe most of the Vin Gerard run.
I say go back and watch The King of Trios with him, Colin, and Stigma, the one where they make it to the semifinals.
Yeah.
And I don't know, just like maybe like hold a breathalyzer up to the TV when those matches are on.
It would explain the mustaches.
Well, that's actually a funny story too.
Hey, yes, we're keeping this podcast going.
That's right.
Do it.
That's right. I demand that you continue to listen, listeners at home. So you know how everybody has matching gear?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Everyone's got like, maybe we got like a matching, like wrist gauntlets, or maybe we have matching tights, or maybe we all wear the same shirt out to the ring. The three of them were all too cheap, and Stigma's outfit did not lend to much change. And since Stigma's mask had a mustache on it, Colin had the bright idea. It's like, hey, mustaches are free. We could just grow mustaches. And that's how we'll be a similar looking team, by all having disgusting mustaches.
And disgusting they were.
Disgusting they were.
Yeah, that was actually my first time. No, it wasn't my first time in the arena, but it was my first Chikara shows. So I also have a fondness for that King of Trios.
I think I remember you talking about that on the Ben Gordon podcast. Yeah, I listened.
It's appreciated. Yeah, because he was at 08 when I missed everything. I missed how Nick Manoa got his wife in a roundabout way.
Yeah, I wasn't intermingling at that time. Things were always very busy on, like, especially on King of Trios days. I have very little downtime.
Which is funny, because that's actually the first time I met you was during the fan conclave of that second evening.
And I think was that the one where we were doing the rock band thing, the Guitar Hero thing, maybe?
Yes. Yeah, it was that year. Yeah, it was. Because I played that year, and then I did karaoke with Ryan Cruz the year after.
Oh man. So I will say this though, this will be the episode of your podcast I do not listen to.
Ah, rude.
Because I'll download it, but I won't listen to it because I lived it, man.
You were there.
I was there, man.
I remember because I think you had discussed not listening to any of the Chikara podcasts I did, and I had hurt feelings. You're like, dude, I was at those Chikara shows, okay? I don't need to hear whatever crap you're talking about, so deal with it.
No, I don't.
Deal with it, I did.
I think I might have listened to some of them.
Probably.
But what'll happen is, like, sometimes I'll get backlogged on podcasts and things fall off. But any podcast that I'm a guest on, I won't listen to because, like I said, I don't know. Like I said before, like, I think I'm a very poor commentator, and sometimes when I get the commentary assignments, and I have if there's times when I have control over that, I'll make sure that I'm not on a match I want to watch later because I want to enjoy the match without having to hear me. And as much as one of my greatest moments of getting to call Johnny Saint versus Johnny Kidd. When that happened in Chikara, the match itself will forever be ruined by my commentary.
Oh, stop it!
And I'm not fishing for, like, everyone to be like, "Oh no, your commentary was fine," because I'll just be like, "Yeah, you're a liar. You're obviously a liar." I say this all the time. When you buy a DVD of some independent wrestling shows, there is a no commentary option. There is not an option for no referee. There is not an option for no ring announcer. There is not an option for a specific wrestler to be omitted from a match. There is an option for no commentary. I do not take that as an attack on me personally, but I certainly know my place in the wrestling world.
I want a no referee feature on certain matches, or just omitting one of the participants. I don't know how that would work.
Well, I think there's a bunch of WWE DVDs that you can buy like that, where there's just a giant blue blob over a certain guy. You don't get your choice, though. It's just that one guy.
Yeah. I wonder whatever happened to that guy.
Oh, boy. I had to put a picture on my photo bucket to upload because we're doing a contest with the Weekly Long Box. We're giving away a page of original art from the Injustice Gods Among Us comic book. So I had to put it on Photo Bucket so I could put the link online into the show notes. And then I haven't touched my Photo Bucket account in forever. And I remember I used to use it to send my buddy Doug offensive Chris Benoit gifts.
Oh, jeez.
So I had to delete them all from my Photo Bucket account.
I thought you just open it, just like an onslaught of horrible Chris Benoit jokes.
No, it was an onslaught of like 3 or 4 horrible gifts.
Okay. So nothing too terrible.
It was pretty bad.
I mean, those 3 gifts are good, but it's not like you open it up and there's like 50 Chris Benoit things just hitting you in the face.
No.
Okay. Well, that's not as bad as I thought then. Okay. Should we finally get to the plugs? Should we let the people go?
So, wrestling-wise, this weekend when this podcast drops on Pro Wrestling Ponderings, but not on WrestleFolks. So this plug is for people who get it from PW Ponderings. This weekend in Cleveland at Turner's Hall is AIW's Girls Night Out 9 and 10. It's a double taping. I think some tickets are still available. Go to AIWrestling.com. I will not be there. But I understand they may have someone who maybe knows women's wrestling, especially on commentary side, a little bit better than I do. I don't know if they've officially announced that yet, but I think that's enough of a tease for you to get those shows when those come out. If you get this from the WrestleFolks show, WrestleFolks feed, boy, Girls Night Out, 9 and 10, what a great bunch of shows those were. Definitely check those out when they come available on smvod.com. The next thing I have on my docket is Wrestling is Cool at the end of October at Proving Grounds in lovely downtown Deptford, New Jersey. Deptford, New Jersey. They announced that Pete Dunne and Mark Andrews are doing a rematch with the Osirian Portal. Their first match together was great. And actually, that match they had with the Osirian Portal at the first Wrestling is Cool show was the first time they ever teamed up. And now they've been like on a whirlwind tour of all these different independent promotions, sleeping on people's floors, riding like Greyhound buses, being amazed that red Solo cups are a thing. So this is going to be one of their last matches before they go back home. They have that show for Wrestling is Cool on the 26th of October, I think that is. And then AIW returns on the 1st of November with their big tag team tournament that I think Andrews and Dunn and the Osirian Portal, among many other teams, are in. So check all those out on the wrestling side. On the podcast side, I have my weekly comic book podcast. It drops every Wednesday, I hope, called The Weekly Long Box. I guess you can kind of sort of get it from iTunes or maybe kind of sort of an RSS feed. Who really knows? If you follow me on Twitter, I tweet the link out every Tuesday or every Wednesday, so check that out there. I also do another podcast called Dadstractions with my friend Brian, talking about parenting stuff, my trials and tribulations as trying to raise a 2-year-old little monster, and I say that in the most loving way. That is at bealittleweird.com, and I know Dadstractions actually works on iTunes. So, and I'm on Twitter. I'm on the Twitter machine, which I think I stole from Reed Bentley, so I'll give him props for that. That's LF Chikarason, with the twitter.com and the / before that. That's the way I enter URLs.
Right, at LF Chikarason. And hey, if you can't get on iTunes, you can go to at Chikara Special on Twitter or chikaraspecial.tumblr.com because I post the weekly long box every week there.
That's right. It does make me happy that you do that. I do like to see, your retweets of that. I like that you're a fan of comic books, and I like that you're a fan of the podcast.
Absolutely. I tell you what, even though I can get it through iTunes, I'm one of the chosen few, apparently. I download it at work, and I listen to it in the morning so I can go to the shop that Wednesday evening or sometime later in the week, and I know what I need to do.
Listen, I've offered to you for me to amend your pull list so that you're getting good books and not wasting your money. And I have that service available to anyone. If you feel you get too many comic books or you don't know where to start in the world of comic books, contact me on Twitter or email me at lfchikarason@ymail.com, and I will gladly put together a specialized, personalized pull list of comic books for you that I know you will enjoy.
Yeah, you definitely did that for me a while ago. I feel like I'm definitely more comfortable now when I know I have too many books and I can figure, okay, I know which ones I can delete. But certainly if I get to that point again, I will not hesitate to contact you. And I recommend anybody, even if you're just starting to get into comics and want some titles that to start off with, Chikarson's a great dude to do that as well.
Thank you very much. And Kevin, thank you very much for having me on the show. I had a great time.
Yeah, I appreciate you burning the midnight oil with me to get this done, and I hope people are not tired of us after this long podcast. But screw it, I had a good time doing it, so that's all that really matters to me in the end.
You know what? They waited this long for it. If you think this was too long, fuck them.
There you go. There you go. You got a Chikara guy swearing on a podcast. That's all you can really ask for. Which, by the way, just so you know, you're allowed to do.
Oh, I am?
Yes.
You don't have to edit that out? I
can
swear on the internet? Okay,
it's going to say. Right. Well, thanks again, man. I really much appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, Kevin.
That was myself and Leonard F. Chikarason chopping up about everything under the sun. I appreciate you listening to this week's episode, especially since it was almost double the length of certain other episodes I've done. So thanks for sticking around. Hope you enjoyed it, because you deserve it. You deserve a longer episode for being such a loyal listener. Before we get out of here, though, I do have some plugs I want to throw in. First of all, for Leonard F. Chikarason, if you do not listen to the Weekly Longbacks podcast or Dadstractions, go ahead and check those out. there's going to be links to those shows in the show notes over at pwponderings.com, or just Google them if you really don't feel like going over there. That's fine. Also, be sure to go to AIW's Girls Night Out 9 and 10 double taping this Sunday at Turner's Hall in Cleveland, Ohio, if you happen to be in the area. If not, go to WrestlingIsTooCool.com to get all the information about their next show in Deptford, New Jersey at the end of the month on Saturday, October 26th. As for me, you can follow me on Twitter at KFord13. Chat it up about some wrestling or any other things that you feel like talking about, but no Doctor Who. I mean, come on. Did you listen to the podcast? I guess you have to if you're listening to this part. But yeah, almost anything else, but just not Doctor Who. Also, again, be sure to follow at WrestleFolks and at PW Ponderings on Twitter. For at PW Ponderings, it gives you all of the latest on podcast news, reviews, articles, things we post on the website. And we're going to be live tweeting, more specifically, I am going to be live tweeting Ring of Honor show this weekend from Baltimore. So follow along with that to be the first one to get results on there. Also, be sure to follow all the other podcasts on PW Pondering, such as The Interview Show, the Weekly Newscast, and Schools In with Kevin Harvey. For the WrestleFolks podcast and network, there's, of course, the Mothership program, WrestleFolks hosted by Thomas Creed, and the Nick Manuel Reed Bentley Variety Show. Go ahead and check those out as well. They all go through iTunes, or you can check out the websites. Again, that's pwponderings.com and wrestlefolks.wordpress.com. Also, I still need art for this show. I'm very upset that people have not been sending things my way. Submit some art for it. It'll go on iTunes. It's something you add to the old resume if you're one of those artistic types, where that'll help you out. I don't mind. I'll give you a follow on Twitter. I'll say thank you. I'm a pretty okay guy when it comes to that. So if you have an idea for some art, mock it up, throw it my way, and let's get this deal going, because I'm sick of being the low man on the totem pole over at the WrestleFolks Podcasting Network. It's embarrassing. I'm starting to tear up. So before I go any further than that, let me just end this episode with a big resounding thank you for 10 fun episodes and to many, many more. And most importantly, thank you for being a fan.